All right, guys. All right, guys. Let's have a discussion about reparations. So, there's been some recent news. The California Reparations Task Force in California, they're going to be doing some recommendations on July the 1st, and it's going to include, most likely, and as far as I know, cash payments for recommendations. Now, granted, it's going to be up to the California legislature, but they understand what's happening in California, and they understand that that July deadline that we're looking at, that's going to be a problem for certain political parties. That's going to be a problem because what that does is that sets expectations. And when expectations are not met, when expectations are not met, people tend to turn. Now, when it comes to the Democrat Party, we know that Democratic Party right now they are suffering politically. They need black people to get back on board. They need black people to give them support. So right now they've been trying to push reparations initiatives. And the problem is that one of the things that has kept Democrats afloat for the longest time is not promising black people anything. When you don't promise us anything, we don't expect anything. I mean, granted, we do expect things because other communities in other groups they get things. But when it comes to this particular country, yeah, well, actually around the world, what I find is that, and what many black people find, especially black Americans, what we find is that political parties either don't make us promises because they understand that we don't forget, or promises are made but never kept. In this case, it's about reparations. Now, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Democrats, they want to talk about a study. They want to study, and delay what is rightfully due to us. Delay it as long as they can. And that's what I've been noticing from the Democrats. But on the flip side, Republicans, they've been just flat out denying us. So what needs to happen in the meantime is that black people, we need to completely withdraw from the political process. Neither side wants us to completely do that. Because both sides are going to eventually need us. Democrats need us in the immediate because without us, Joe Biden doesn't make it back into the White House, and many Democrats will lose their seats in the Congress and also the Senate. That changes the courts. That changes the political landscape. That changes the intelligence agencies. That changes a lot. And Democrats are starting to realize that black people are not afraid to sit at home or vote against you. It's not that we like Republicans or independents or libertarians. It's that we, as a collective, have been the most ignored group in the whole country. Right? We are the most ignored group in the whole country, and right now we are political free agents. If you look at the current polls right now, I was reading something from ABC CM News, and they're talking about polls that are showing that 52% of black people are in support of Joe Biden, while the rest are just saying we're likely either not going to vote or vote against Democrats. And you're starting to really see that trend now. You're starting to see the trend of black people rising up against certain narratives. Because the one thing that we are sick of is this idea that we got to stick with Democrats. Good morning, main libertarian. Democrats, the one thing that I've noticed throughout my tenure on this planet is that Democrats have a tendency to take us for granted. And by take us for granted, I don't just mean take our votes for granted, but also take our cultural and social support for granted. Like for example, whenever you get someone who criticizes Democrats or even Barack Obama or Joe Biden or any of the political, heavyweights as far as the political liberal is concerned, especially in the more wider side of the liberal spectrum, what you'll find is that you'll get this swift rebuke. It's almost lashing, like get back in line. And the thing is that you get these people who will tell you that you're supposed to vote Democrat, you're supposed to vote this and that. And I gotta tell those people, excuse me, who died and made you Jesus? Where do you get off telling me who I gotta vote for? In no way do I gotta do anything. In no way. Now, I want you to understand something, right? My interest falls with my community, my people, and my personal interests. And that's how it should be. I shouldn't be worried about what's happening in China because I ain't Chinese. I should be worried about what's happening in Russia because I ain't Russian. I ain't worried about what's happening in Brazil. I'm not Brazilian. I'm worried about what happens right here with my community, people who look just like me, and even my fellow Americans. That's who I worry about. So with that being said, you if you look at some of the issues domestically, name some of the biggest issues right now: homelessness, inflation. You name it. Lack of health care, lack of access to health care. Not just the fact that you can't even afford the health care, but in some things, you know, some people don't even have the option of getting health care in some areas. I know it's hard to believe that, but there are areas in this country that are actually like that. There's some folks out there who don't have internet. Some folks that even though it's available, they can't afford it. When you look at inflation, inflation makes it very difficult to afford the things that you used to be able to afford. So that being said, I mean, you are looking at a lot of problems that we have here in the states, and some of the economic and some of the domestic and social problems. It will be solved with reparations. Prime example. We know that this country is ran partially off of capitalism. There's a lot of socialism aspects here. We all know that. But if we sit back and we be honest here, there's a lot of capitalism here, right? So if there's a whole lot of capitalism, then what we have to realize is that a lot of this stuff is predicated off of spending. And so let's listen to what people usually say. Well, if you guys get reparations, you're just going to spend it on Jordans and everything else. That's still called spending. You claim that we're just going to spend it and become broke again. Yeah, but we still spent the money, right? So if we still spent the money, then that means that would actually stimulate and boost the economy. Every time there was a stimulus check that was given out, that was the intention, right? And the money will stay right here, because the one thing that we do in in the states here in America is, the one thing that we tend not to do as a black community is put some of the money back into the black community. So what I say is that you give black Americans the opportunity to build our own businesses and also spend money right here, because the one thing that we do is we tend to not venture out. We're the one people that don't travel out of the states that we're born in. We're the one people that don't leave the country a lot. We're the one people that pays a lot of taxes but get very little back in return for it. We're the one people who other communities, like the Asian community, when they have a business, they rely off of. How many Asian hair salons and beauty parlors do you see in the black community? A bunch of them. A bunch of them. And this is why you're getting a lot of people who are supporting it now, because they're realizing more and more and more the economic impact that would not only have for us but for other people who do business with us, right? So think about it, right? You already have homeowners, and you need new homeowners, and you need black people who are willing to buy homes. There's a bunch of black people who want to buy homes who just don't have the economic capital to do so. You give them the economic capital, now all of a sudden your mortgage market bounces back. Now that you have black people with some money, now they qualify for higher credit, because now they will actually try to pay off debts. Now with a higher credit threshold, now they're actually getting loans, and that actually helps your banks. Another thing is, you're having a problem with a lot of Americans affording health care. Well, with that being said, if you gave out reparations, what would happen is a lot of Americans who didn't have health care suddenly have health care, right? Suddenly. So what you have to realize is that this isn't just about your feelings or some backlash or your opposition to it. It's also the one thing you haven't tried in terms of an economic stimulus, right? It's the one thing you haven't tried in terms of economic stimulus. So the other thing is that black people, the one thing that we are known to do is not only amass money, but we tend to, you know, do a lot of base building amongst ourselves. Like, it's Black Wall Street, you look at Rosewood, you look at a lot of places, right? And what ends up happening, and I want to invite Bushmaster on. Let's have a conversation. I I find that we tend to build these large these very very large enclaves, and we tend to actually stay in one or two particular areas, but we tend to not venture out of those areas, and that's what I'm trying to build up. So it's not just about making a moral good, but also economics. How you doing, Bushmaster?
Good morning. Happy Memorial Day. No,
Memorial Day. Are you a veteran?
I am.
When did you serve, man?
From 2003 to 2012,
Okay. Oh yeah,
September
yeah. I uh
2012.
I, I went in 2004. I got out 2015.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, yeah. I went to Kandahar, and they got me at 100% now, so it's pretty nice. But interesting.
I'm at 90%.
90.
I was in Kandahar my third tour overseas.
Do you remember the boardwalk
The boardwalk?
at Kandahar Airfield?
Oh no, I didn't. I wasn't on the airfield. I mean, I was there,
Oh,
but just to land there and then go to my. I was infantry. I was out in the on a JSS. I wasn't on a fob.
oh, okay, okay, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because like you gotta like just like move around some. But yeah, Kandahar Airfield, that was an interesting spot. Happy Memorial Day to you as well. I'm very curious though. So when we talk about reparations, do you understand what we're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
What is your understanding of it?
Reparations. It's
Mm.
supposed reparations for something that happened to your ancestors.
Oh, and is that all? Is that the best definition that you have?
Well, I mean, it's something that happened in the past, is it not?
I that's not what I asked you, and you've been in the military, so you know how to follow directions, right? That's not what I asked you. Is that the best definition that you have?
Mm, I mean,
Is that the best
in
definition
it.
that you have?
That's in a jar. That's what it is.
Okay. Well, let me explain. Reparations is a repayment of damage done. Now, I want you to understand what's happening here. And if you can't follow this, then I really, really worry, and I really, really doubt that you're in the military, because it kind of actually explain escalation. Okay, so you understand Kandahar, right? And you understand the reason why we paid those people so much money after we went in and bombed the place, right? Do you get that?
Sure.
Okay. So you understand what would have happened had we went in there and bombed the place and never compensated those people, right?
Should have never compensated them, in my
This,
opinion.
sir, follow directions. You're in the military. I asked you a question. Do you understand what would have happened had we bombed that place and never gave compensation?
Go ahead. Explain. What you
No,
think
no.
would
I
have
asked you
happened?
a question, and you should follow simple instructions. You say you were 11 Bravo, right? So the things that you did, if you didn't follow instructions, your battle buddies suffer, right? So let's follow instructions. Do you understand what
Apparently,
what what would have happened? I'm talking.
okay, so
Do you
like,
understand what?
I'm my
Do you
own person.
understand what would have happened?
I don't
But
see. I'm
again,
my
I'm
own
I'm
person. I
I'm
do my own
talking now.
thinking, man.
I'm talking,
I understand, but
and I'm
you're
asking you a question.
making
You're
a
gonna answer the
comment. I'm going
question, or
to
you gotta
respond.
go. Okay.
All right. See ya.
So let me ask the question, and then you respond. Now I'm gonna give you a chance to freely talk, but I want you to understand. You see this? That lets me know he's not actually in the military. I don't believe that, because somebody in the military can follow simple instructions. Simple instructions. I wasn't even making it complicated. I was gonna actually let him talk. I just wanted to make sure he understood he actually understood reparations. That's why I was trying to relate it to something that he understood. He named himself something after the military. So I'm trying to explain it in military terms. How else can I do that if we can't get an understanding of what reparations are as a term? And he couldn't even do it. I doubt it. Serious doubts. Serious doubts. You say you don't really understand it. I'm a direct descendant of slaves. I'm trying to explain to you in layman's terms. Whether you agree with it or not, I'm trying to get you to understand the concept. Right? You came to a live stream to a black person about reparations. If you don't understand the concept, then sit back, listen, and understand. I'll give you a chance to talk. That's why I brought you on. But if you can't show simple respect, I can't have you on. It ain't your platform. It ain't your channel. It ain't your message. You don't get to dictate to other people. When you come onto a black man's platform, you show some kind of respect. The same way I would do you. The same way I would do you. You answer simple questions. I wasn't even trying to pin you. I was just trying to talk, brother. I wasn't even trying to pin you. I was just trying to talk. Get a simple definition down. So, what I'm going with this is that if none of us repaired Afghanistan after what happened, you know what would have happened. It would have been left in ruin. And that's why he didn't want to answer the question, because it's something that he could relate to. He understands what would have happened had he answered that question. I would have said, okay. Now imagine that process happening over thousands of years, or even not thousands of years, just 100 years. 100 years. What if we bombed that place, never fixed it, right? Right? Never fixed it. And we just left it like that. What do you think would happen 100 years from now? Hmm? What do you think would happen 100 years from now? You know what would happen 100 years from now. You know exactly what would happen. And that's why that guy could not answer the question. It's something that he can relate to. It's something that he can see, touch, taste, and feel. And that's why he couldn't answer. Because you're forcing the white supremacist to see his face. The one thing the white supremacists hates doing, they hate seeing themselves. They hate seeing themselves. They always want to have this image of themselves as being the hero, or being the non-racist, or being the person who is always for justice. When the truth is anything but. And they know this. This is why I ask the questions that I ask. When I get these people, right, on the hot seat, that's why I ask the questions that I ask. Because when you interrogate them with facts and evidence, they can't answer the question. Can't do it. No, I said, hey man, you can talk. I just want you to answer these questions first so that we get a basic understanding. If we can't get a basic understanding, we can't talk. Because we are having two different conversations. Two different conversations. And most of these people claim to be combat veterans are not combat veterans. You want to know how I know? Because most combat veterans, they just put it on their profile or just line up. They don't go around parading it around. Most of us have PTSD. Right? So, reparations, let's talk about it. Here's why reparations should be paid. One is it's a debt owed. America has to pay its debts. Can't talk about black people in our debt situation if you don't pay your debts to America. And you guys say, well, we could do a program. Can it be education? People can. No, 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 no. When you have bad credit, right? You show up to a car dealership, right? And you got bad credit. You think they gonna want to hear? Can I give you a book instead of this cash? No, no, no. Give us cash, right? We don't want your little program. We don't want no statue. We don't want no apology. The reparations task force, they talking about some well part of the reparations task force, we're gonna issue an apology. You can keep your apology. You can keep your apology. I don't need your apology. I, Listen, even if you did apologize, you ain't sorry. You ain't sorry. You ain't sorry. You ain't sorry. Right? And Mars, if you see any of the deflection stuff, the silly stuff, get them up out of here. Get them up out of here, Mars. We don't want to see that kind of stuff, right? Because the thing about people, when it comes time to discuss anything that black people need to get, you're going to notice these people do one or two things. One, deflect and pivot, or two, cry about it. And all you see is deflecting and pivoting. And I want you to notice some very distinct, unique patterns, right? Right? Very distinct patterns. Notice so far, people haven't really come up with a viable counter argument yet. Any kind of viable counter arguments, right? I want cash. I want cash, Terry. And if you see anybody who ain't black talk about, well, you should get this and that, mods, you already know. Mods, you already know, right? And let's see. Let's bring this guy on. I want to bring this guy on. This person here. Rep 8319. I want you to come on. I'll bring you on. And mods, make sure you guys are doing your thing. Hey, Nazia, thank you very much for doing your thing. People talking about they'll take gold. Listen, I'll take cash. I can buy the gold with cash. All right. Stop listening to these people talking about gold. You wanna know why? Here's here's why. Because let's say that God, especially if you ain't got a profile picture, if you start doing that stuff, good, get up out of here. All right, I don't need the peanut gallery because I know who you are. Especially if you ain't got a profile picture, probably a white person, probably a white person. And Peter Quill, you got to go too because you've been trolling the whole time. You got to go. See, a lot of these folks are white people, right? Well, a lot of these folks are white people who are masquerading as black people, right? Because let me ask you a question. Let's say that the Brits currency, because again, they they they're saying, oh, the Brits currency that's gonna come out and that's gonna phase out cash, right? Let's say that it does all that, right? Let's say that it does all that, right? Well, suppose Brits currency comes out and it phases out cash, right? Okay, yeah. Let's say that the Brits currency and it phases out cash, right? Do you think that they're gonna stop paying Ukraine? Huh? Do you think they're gonna stop giving money to Ukraine? No. And people coming in saying, well, every ethnic group would be entitled to reparations. Don't know they wouldn't. Your white self wouldn't be, right? Right? And here we go, Evergreen. Evergreen G. Listen, the money is not real. I want to bring you on. I want to have a conversation. I want to understand why these people are doing this all of a sudden. A couple years ago, you said reparations wasn't going to happen. And the one thing I don't want to hear is a bunch of people lying and cap and say, oh, no, I wasn't that guy. Shut up. Most people were. We have the polls. Stop it. Now, all of a sudden, you want to say, oh, don't worry about cash. It ain't going to be cash, guys. You got to go. Shut up. Stop capping. I'm good, Evergreen G. I'm good. You got to go. Goodbye. No, no, I'm good. Nope, nope. I don't have time for people trolling and hiding in the comment section. If you want to have a conversation with me, come have a conversation with me. But stop hiding behind stock accounts. Come behind your real account, right? Nobody wants to hear you whine in the comment section and be a op or an agent or be a freaking informant. Nobody cares about how you complain about reparations. It's going to happen whether you like it or not. The times are changing. Because the fact is, right? The fact is that overall, what we're finding, right? What we're finding is that people are trying everything possible to now discourage her, right? Right? To 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 now discourage us from getting from actually getting. You're now realizing it's probably going to happen because Democrats are probably going to push it because they're going to have to, right? They ain't got a choice. They got to. If they want to get back into the White House, they have to give us the money. They have to, right? Reparations will definitely occur. And here's why they will occur. It's because now there's an incentive to make it happen. Let's talk about Dave 57391. You said kidding, right? No, 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 no. I'm not kidding. I want to have a conversation with you, man. Right? Right? I want to have a conversation. I want to have a conversation with you. And I don't want you to hide in the comment section either. I want you to come talk to me. Right? I want you to come talk to me. The one thing that I've noticed is that people who love to make these little comments, they never actually want to come and have the conversation. They just want to hide behind stock accounts, or they want to just hide. And it's really sad because I want to have a conversation. I want to understand how you feel, right? But what I'm not going to let you do is come onto my platform and grandstand. No, if you want to talk, we're going to have a conversation, right? We gonna have a conversation. It's not gonna be you just coming on trying to grandstand. Oh, Democrats bad, this bad. Hush, hush. If you ain't got the bravery to come and face me, come talk to me, right? Then why would you come to a black man's live stream knowing that you ain't black to discuss something that you have no interest in even discussing? Just weird. What's going on, Chops? How you doing?
Hey man, how you doing?
Oh, doing great, doing great. So tell me, you were curious about who would get it?
Oh, yeah,
Am
I
I
was
wrong?
just curious how what the identification process for those who I don't know what would be a lesser of the two terms
Right.
qualify or you know how would you identify that pool of individuals that would receive reparations?
Well, easy. If you can trace your lineage back to the 1870 census or something somewhere close, or if you're the direct descendant of a Black American slave and you've identified as Black, that's how you would do it. That would cut out a lot of the let's say a lot of the fat, because one of the things is that people were concerned about the cost of it. Well, the people don't realize is that the people who should be the beneficiaries are people who could actually trace their lineage, which would not be every Black person. And that's the whole part of it. I think people are missing is that you have foundational Black Americans, Black freedmen, Adolfs, whatever. We're arguing for lineage-based reparations. We don't just want to give it to everybody because they're Black, because that doesn't make any sense. Because I'm Black and I experienced Hurricane Hugo, but you had a hurricane in the Caribbean. Should I now get hurricane relief funds because I experienced a hurricane, even though it was two different like time periods? Of course not. It doesn't make any sense. It should be strictly scoped for the people who are the direct descendants of those slaves. The same way it is for Native Americans when you have to do like an actual lineage thing. It's not just a blood test. Same thing here. That's how you would determine it, and you can do it through ancestry.com. You can do it through many ways, but you can do it through documentation. You can do it through DNA. You can do it through several ways, but it should be limited to just Black descendants of American slaves. That way, it's limited to just the people, to just those people who that debt was owed to, and that's it. Nobody else. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, do you agree with
The second
reparations,
thing,
or go ahead?
the sec-
Go ahead.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how it would work out in theory based on the history of the United States itself. And the reason why I say that is that you've had. I I think that you would have to move. I think that you would have to essentially move the time bar forward, and
Mm-mm.
I don't see where it would fit historically in the history of the country during this slave, I don't know what you would call it, immigration, perhaps. I don't know, for lack of a
Hmm.
better term. Move that time bar forward into, uh, well, let's just go with anything post 1933. So
Nope. Nope.
if you have a,
Hard no.
if you have a country, what's that? Let's hear it.
Hard no. Hard no. Hard no. Do you want to know why? Because
Let's
then
hear
that
it.
would include everybody who isn't a direct descendant of American slaves. That would include immigrants at that point. No. The answer is no. If you ask most Black descendants of American slaves, we've answered unanimously no. And do you want to know the other reason why we've said no? Because that's how people mosey their way into our claims. See, the reason why Native Americans do lineage-based stuff now to accept membership into tribes is because white people, they do all kind of tricky stuff, right? They'll say, well, I have DNA ancestry to a Native American. Everybody's got DNA ancestry to a Native American if you live in America. So that's why we set these hard limitations. That way we don't get white people, we don't get all kind of immigrants coming into our claim. That's why. We're trying to make it cheaper and actually affordable by limiting the scope. Extremely limited. And whoever's left out, they're just left out. Oh well. We ain't holding up the line because someone doesn't fit the bill. If you don't fit the bill, you don't get the money. Simple as that, right?
Well, it makes sense to me. But what about bankruptcy?
Bankruptcy. What do you mean?
That's what I was referring to. So when you had the Emergency Banking Act in 33 and the United States was declared bankrupt,
Mhm.
and then the beneficiaries of that were the International Monetary Fund, which essentially established that the quote unquote United States of America exists in name only.
Hmm.
How does that fit into the equation?
I don't know what you're referring to, but in terms of bankruptcy, um, reparations is not about racism. You know that, right?
No, I'm not getting it. I'm not getting at that at all. If so, you wouldn't collect a reparation fund per se through individuals across the country. I'm assuming that it would probably be paid from a government pooling of funds. And if that's the case, what I'm referring to is, and the United States itself did go bankrupt in 33. How does that fit into the picture?
It doesn't. It doesn't. It's just like you built the country off of slavery. The banking institution, like even listen, Wells Fargo and Bank of America, they put out statements saying, "Yeah, we partially built what we did off of slavery." They've openly admitted to it. You know, you got Wells Fargo, you got the tobacco companies, pharmaceutical companies, you know, Johnson and Johnson, a lot of companies who built that. Those companies and this government still exists. I don't care about what happened in 1933 because we built everything before then and it still did it afterwards. So the stuff is here. What we built is here. You can physically see it here. So if we physically see it here and you're enjoying the benefits off of free slave labor that was never paid, and no, please don't mention affirmative action. Affirmative action mostly benefits white women, not black people. You can simply Google that. I can flip my camera and I can show it to you, but it doesn't even benefit us. So we have never been compensated. It, the country was here, right? That it's kind of like saying that I'm not sure what you're getting at.
No,
The United States was a
just
country,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
right? Because I'm thinking to myself, okay, World War One, World War Two, you had Indian wars, you had presidents of the United States. That you've had presidents, right? You do acknowledge Abraham Lincoln, right?
Okay.
He was a president. You do acknowledge George Washington, right? He's a president.
Okay.
So
Sure.
if he's a president, and if Donald Trump and Joe Biden were our last two, that means that from the point of George Washington up until Joe Biden, America was a country, right? Yes.
I'm just throwing that out there. I was just throwing that out there as a
No,
hypothetical.
but I'm
If
asking
you're
you a
going with
question.
the history,
From George Washington until Joe Biden, this America was a country, right? From the two president points that I just gave you, right?
okay,
Were they?
sure,
Okay, so that means that whatever happened to black people in terms of slavery, whatever else, from that point until that point, it's on America if they not only endorsed it but engaged in it, right?
okay.
No. I'm asking you a question. That's not a rhetorical statement.
Oh yeah, yes. I would.
That's
That would
why
be
you
my
gotta pay.
understanding then.
That's why you gotta pay it because it was never compensated. I gave the example of Afghanistan. Had we bombed that country and never compensated those people and just left it there for 100 years, the reason why the so-called combat veteran who just came on wouldn't even answer the question is because he understood the answer. If we bombed Afghanistan and left it there for 100 years and never compensated those people, it would look like the freaking Stone Age 100 years later, right? So, what do you think happened to the native black population here? Why do you think we are disproportionately the homeless? Why do you think we're disproportionately people who are in poverty? Why do you think our communities look the way that they do? Because even when we tried to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps, Black Wall Street, Rosewood, you name it, it was burned down. And even now that you have black celebrities who are trying to come up, what happens every time? Roadblocks. So the reason why we're discussing reparations, the reason why we are having these conversations about black issues, black empowerment, is because for the longest time, the mode of operation, the SOP, standard of operation in this country was to crap on us. Use us as pillars to build everybody else up. That's the reason why we're having these discussions right now. And we're having these discussions, and I'm noticing a pattern of people denying us, making every excuse possible. Do you not find it concerning that there's people more willing to throw money at Ukraine versus the people who are disproportionately the homeless in your country?
Yeah, I
Do you
believe
think
that the
it's
whole time. I look at if you was just to take the enormous sums that have been collected and sent overseas to fight, however you want to label it, if you would have just divided that in uh, increments and passed it to every man, woman, and child in the United States, what would that have done instead?
well, I tell you, it probably wouldn't have done much. And here's why it wouldn't have done much. Because the one population you haven't lifted up is your black population. If you lift your black population up and then leave us alone once you do it, your country would be fine right now. But the reason why your country is not fine right now is because you spend so much money on the police to police us. Everyone lies about this, and it just makes us angry because we all know the truth. You spend so much money on the police to police up black people. You spend so much money on mass incarceration when disproportionately the people who are being incarcerated for victimless crimes are black people. The number one exonerated group in America are black men, according to the according to the Innocence Project. It's nothing that that I said. The Innocence Project, the people who get people free, they said that. So when you spend that kind of money incarcerating people based on faulty evidence, based on false convictions, based on nonsense, based on lies, right? Right?
Okay.
I
Yes.
I just I find it interesting how people have spent so much money persecuting us. You get people who will say in one breath, right? Well, Joe Biden, he's terrible. He's terrible. He did the freaking crime bill, right? Right? So
Sure.
the crime bill targeted black people. I fully agree with Republicans on that one. But if you're going to say the crime bill targeted black people, then what you're saying is that black people have been targeted. And if they've been targeted, why? And why does that never come up when we mention reparations for black descendants of American slaves or foundational black Americans? Why is it that people never ever bring that up as a point towards paying it? People only bring up us going broke or bring up some obscure history or this and that. Who's gonna get it? I didn't notice these conversations just 5 years ago. I've been black all my life. I've been talking about reparations all my life. I have never in my life heard any of these discussions until recently. I'm from South Carolina. That's where 40% of the slaves came in through the 40% of all slaves who came in off of slave ships. 40% of them came in through the port of Charleston in South Carolina. That's where I'm from. So I know this history pretty well because my grandmother, she told me the history because her great grandmother was actually a slave. So I know the history, and I've been having this conversation my entire life. I've never heard these counterpoints. Oh, who's gonna get it? How would you determine it? 5 years ago, I was told we weren't going to get it at all. At all.
So
Because
would the
people, go ahead.
do you think the reparations might be paid not to an individual, really, not to an individual, but collectively as a
It should
group,
be
or
paid to
what do you?
individual black descendants of American slaves. Now, there's going to be certain scenarios in which the payouts are going to be funky. Like, for example, if you got, for example, a black child but a white mother, the payout's going to be funky. I get that one. I think in those cases you should be 18 years of you should be 18 years or or older to qualify. And if you are not the age of majority, which is 18, then later on, what should happen is that your money should be held in trust. And then when you become of age, you come get it. But there should be a cutoff date. You know, there should be a cutoff date. If you don't come claim this money by this date, by the time that you are 18, cut it off. All right, we ain't gonna be sitting here, you know, hugging stuff. All right, no, 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 no. So I'm very curious. Do you agree with it or not? I'm trying to get to what you believe.
Sort of, yeah, but I think there's a lot to be done and said, because I think it'd be foolhardy to commit oneself to a solution before you know whether such solution is workable. That's why I'm asking the type of questions that I am.
Right, right. I get it. It's to the point where I'll give you a prime example of the reason why I get so annoyed with these conversations, and maybe you will understand once you hear it, right? No matter what people say, I know that two or three years from now, we're still going to be giving money to Ukraine. No matter what your opinion is, no matter what my opinion is, we're going to be giving money to Ukraine. We're going to be giving money to other countries. We're going to be drone striking other countries. We're going to be doing all that stuff. And that has nothing to do with America. So the fact that people are so against us getting this, it lets me know it's about disliking us. You had no problem when it was going to, you know, a different country. And the fact that here's what you should think about, right? The fact that it hasn't been paid so far, but the whole time money has been going to other countries and people who aren't even citizens. That should tell you a lot about how this country actually feels about us, about how many people in white America feels about us. It's not every single person. But at this point, you would have to say it's a majority for it to be happening for this long. If I were to come over to your house and slap you in the face for the next 5 or 6 days, you would call that a pattern, right? So if I did it for
Sure.
like 100 years, you would feel some kind of way, wouldn't you? Hmm.
Repeat what you said again.
If I went over to your house and I slapped you in the face for 5 days straight, you would feel some kind of way. Well, my people have been slapped in the face for the past 400, 500 years. It's gotten to the point where some of the things, the very things that white America puts in horror movies actually happen to us. You put, flesh eating cannibal zombies into zombie movies. People actually ate us. People made us into like freaking soups and stuff. You get these horror movies where you get these little stuff where oh they're gonna make this person, they're gonna cast a magical spell and make a person into like a frog or a freaking candle. When they caught Nat Turner, when they had the freaking slave rebellions, when they caught him, they did that to that man. They turned his body into all kind of soaps and oils and all kind of crazy stuff. Yeah, there's a book called the the Delectable Negro. You should go and read that. It is. I would recommend to have a strong stomach because I threw up. It was some pretty horrific stuff. They were breeding. There were some stories where we were being bred just for food, meat. In some cases, you had some cases where people were. You would take the biggest, blackest, strongest black dude, and you would breed him with other black people and make super slaves. See, that's where my family lineage is from. Marion County, Horry County, South Carolina. See, the one thing that the South Carolina and Mississippi, Alabama, some of those hardcore southern states, the one thing that they were known for is their breeding programs. This is why you're getting a lot of these athletes who are coming from the South who are black dudes who are super athletic. You get these people who will bring up, oh, what about Dirk Nowitzki? What about Nikola Jokic? Doesn't compare to Michael Jordan. Doesn't compare to Anthony Davis. Doesn't compare to a freaking LeBron James in terms of being athletic. They have they've bred us in a way that we have weird physical features. We're stronger, we're faster, and that has lasted over. So some of the physical effects of slavery, it's still with us even now. This is why, a black guy like me, I'm almost 40, but I can still run 5 miles a day. There's a reason for that. There's a reason why you and I could be the exact same age and you will never match me physically. There's a reason for that. It is a sad reality what happened to us in this country. And the part that people don't want to accept is that had the handouts not been given to your folks, you wouldn't even be here. We're only here because we're survivors. We've been taught to survive in the most harshest conditions possible. Even while we were enslaved, we developed our own languages. We developed our own food, our own culture, our own dances. We developed a sense of survivalism. And that's why we survive. We survive not because, we're so great. We survive because we've had to go without. We've had to be inventors. We've had to be, engineers, doctors. We've had to be that. I think what's happening now is that now that Black America has been doing this stuff for so long without any kind of thanks, without any kind of pat on the back, any kind of compensation for any of the things that we've built, I think we finally said, you know what? Enough's enough. Can you dig that?
Sure. I think the majority of I think it's one of the main causes of disparity um, is perhaps the perspective, or the how other people, what people feel is meant by reparations. I mean, because uh, if you if you were to reasonably interpret it to mean um, cash flowing from some Americans to others in, some form of race conscious ways to redress racial wrongs of the past, then it's a complete disastrous idea for all groups. But if you're looking at uh, identifying, you know, a particular nation's, or the United States, commitment to equal opportunity for all its people, especially when you're having a discussion about reparations for the descendants of uh, those once enslaved, then it makes sense. Are you following me?
I'm understanding. I think it just comes down to something a lot more simple. Because again, I work in journalism, right? I do a lot of news articles. I do a lot of videos, and the one thing I've noticed throughout the years, I've been doing this for years now. The one thing that I've noticed throughout the years is that people's intentions tend to be a lot more simplistic. You know, like you ever had the helicopter parent who can never accept that their child has done something wrong, so they come up with these long, elaborate explanations as the reason why their child was acting out.
Sure,
Oh, he just missed his daddy, papa, sugar bear, pet cat, when it's just simple of he's just acting out. You know? Does that make any sense?
sure.
So I think a lot of it just comes down to the reason why you have to look at the evidence, right? The evidence shows reparations hasn't been paid so far. And not only was it old since slavery, when we left slavery, it's not like we were treated any better. So the resistance that you're seeing right now has nothing to do with economics. Because if it were about economics, why do we pay reparations to Italian Americans and also Japanese Americans or even Jewish Americans? If that were about money, it was never about money. It wasn't about money.
Well, that's why I mentioned earlier, would you pay it individually or into a group, a
Yeah.
foundation of sorts?
No, no, because then what would happen is that money will get co-opted, and here's the thing, right? So there's a principle, right? The principle is don't let the devil pick its poison, right? So that being said, I want you to notice, right, how quick how quick people are to throw out, foundations or trying to get education benefits. Notice how people are so quick to throw it out, and yet when we say, "Hey, just write a check," I want you to notice how much resistance that people give to that versus just, some kind of donation to the NAACP or this whoop-de-whoop fund or building a statue. Notice the lack of resistance for one thing, but not the other. It's very strange. You get a lot of white people complaining about the cost of college, right? So then why are you going to throw out college like that, right?
Well, I see and I see a lot of comments down below referring to Holocaust and Israel and the Native American Indians, and those are completely different scenarios in all regards.
Yeah,
Um, you know, Israel was a sovereign nation. The sovereign nation was created for the natives here. We're not looking at in terms of reparation agendas that I've read across anywhere that we're going to create a sovereign state for African Americans and set it up. But each one of those have had their problems, and they've had them problems when disbursements were made on an individual basis and they were paid collectively, such as into uh, the the uh, sovereign nations of the Indians that you find in the United States. But
right.
back in '63, if we take a look at like when Martin Luther King made his address at the Lincoln Memorial in '63, and he was talking about the Declaration of Independence as a promissory note. Uh, I think his stance on it was pretty well defined. He understood that the wrongs and atrocities of which he spoke about on that day could not be redressed with money, or rather money alone. And I think that's just as true today as when he spoke it then. It's not
Right,
going to,
right,
I think systematically what you would find, um, and this comment here is not really based on gender, creed, religion, basis of race, etc. I think if you have a group of people, whether a disbursement of reparation is paid individually, especially if it's paid in one lump sum, then you're looking at, well, hell, a majority of the people in the United States are financially illiterate anyway.
Okay.
I think it would pose a problem that it would just essentially be stolen away in essence.
Can I
So
can I
it
can I
has
can I ask
to.
you a question? Can I ask you a
Sure,
question? So you've been in court cases, right?
sure.
You've seen a judge order restitution to a victim, right?
Okay.
Have you ever seen a judge say, "Hey, I'm not going to order this restitution, right? Because the victim may go and blow the money. The victim is financially illiterate." Have you ever seen a judge do that?
Yes.
I have never seen that, and I work corrections.
Yes.
I've
I've seen
never
them.
seen that.
I've seen them receive. I've seen awards be incremental,
No,
and
no,
I've
no, 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 no,
seen
no. That's not incremental. Let me show you something too. See that right there? That's called a steno machine. My wife does court reporting. I've never heard of a case like what you're saying. Not even once.
It's because it
I've
doesn't
seen
exist.
I've
There's no
seen
such
Yeah.
thing
I've
as
seen
not
I've
awarding. There's no such thing. You what you're talking about, Shots, is maybe installments of payment, but not
that's what I meant by incremental, being
right. But
installments,
that
just
does. But
like
the
just,
victim still
just
gets the restitution.
sure they
Right.
get the award. Yeah, most definitely. I wasn't saying that they don't get the
Okay.
award based on that fact. I meant they try to be, that's what the claim is anyway, protecting of. Much like, let's say, a child that has survivor benefits for two deceased parents, and it goes into an account until they reach a particular age or something like that. Not
Right.
that they don't get an award of sorts.
So can I ask you a question? Did we before we sent off all those billions of dollars to Ukraine, did we check to see how financially literate any of them were? We didn't even check if they were militarily literate.
Well,
Not
that
to
goes to
mention, we
the
didn't even
essence of
check if
like.
it's being spent properly, being
Well,
hoarded and stolen
that
by a
was part
bunch
of
of
the reason.
oligarchs in Ukraine.
Right. That was part of the essence of my question of whether it would be collective as a group, such as sovereign nation, comparably, or if it would be passed down to or dispersed to individuals. Because I think if it was passed or distributed through some kind of collective act, then that's just going to manifest into a great big scandal itself, probably.
I think it just should be simple. Hey, black sons of American slaves. Here's a check. Here you go. Paid in full. Boom.
My only
Go spend some
pushback,
money.
General, is that you have to find a way to do it without spiking inflation. Meaning, it can't be a standalone bill that is to print more money on unlimited.
It absolutely can be.
You need to generate a tax in order to pay for it.
No, you
Because
don't.
already we spend far. I mean, we're at deficit spending in excess of $1 trillion annually, basically.
Because we're spending it on everything but black people. We're spending money
Oh, I agree.
against black people, but not spending it
Well,
for them. So no, we don't need to adjust the budget any. What we need to do is not pay so much money for people who aren't citizens. People, and I don't mean just Hispanic people. I mean the Ukrainians too. Everyone who's not a citizen. So long as we have black people living on the streets, sorry, your problem.
yeah, well,
I ain't got to
I
go
agree.
overseas to find
Black
somebody who's
people,
hungry.
veterans, everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's we you could spike inflation, but wouldn't nobody worry about that with the freaking Japanese? And we had just left a war, and so we were broke. So
Well,
again,
post World
every
War II, I
time
was
we paid money out to people in this country, we were always broke while in the process because we're broke right now, and yet we're giving money to Native Americans.
right. Well, call it It is. I mean, let's just be perfectly honest. The reason that there isn't a real initiative for reparations is one, Black Americans only make 13% of the population. Two, they,
Mm,
en masse don't typically. No, this 13%. It's maybe 14, but it's
I
about
mean,
thirteen
yeah,
percent
but
of the
Asians only
population
make
that
up
are Black.
7%, and Japanese people still got a hate crime bill and reparations.
Right. Well, I mean, they were interned en masse. I agree with you.
And we were interned for over
Right,
400 years, and even
right,
afterwards,
right,
you
right.
had mass incarceration.
No, no, I understand. I
There
understand.
is no
There,
comparison of Asian people. They have not faced anything at any. You can't show me a single point in history in which Asian people en masse suffer more than us. Even if you take the Japanese people in internment camps, if I were to look at the amount of lynchings and mass incarceration that was going on, even during that point,
sure.
there's no comparison.
Sure. No, and I'm not making excuses. Like fundamentally, the reason that reparations aren't a topic issue that actually is being addressed is because there's no political will for it, and there's no
Oh,
political
there
will
is.
for it.
There is.
Not from no, not I'm not saying from Black Americans. I'm saying from the government, right, and
Right.
the
I mean,
elected
it's
representatives.
there's
That's
no
what I meant.
political will for it because we're black.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you
I mean,
think that
and
the
that's
do you think that the causation for reparations for the Asiatic community is based on um, maybe a particular designation as whereas they were characterized as victims of quote unquote war, and maybe
hmm,
that designation needs to occur first before reparations are taken serious.
because it's just another hurdle. That's all.
No, you
Listen.
understand what you
I,
understand
I
what I'm
understand what
getting
you're
at there.
saying, but that was never the reason. Because if that were the reason, right? Well, in Philadelphia, do you know what happened in Philadelphia back in the day?
Yeah,
The
when they
police
bombed
dropped
the
bombs.
yeah, yeah, I still remember that story.
They bombed Philadelphia. That's an act of war right there. They and we've known that for decades. Has anyone ever declared it that or even cared to? No. It don't matter what you call something. Listen, do, do I need to explain to you what the process? Do I need to call something an act of war when you take a human body and you cook it up and you eat it? I ain't gotta call it that, right? I can see what that is.
Well, I understand that, and I mean that's stretched. You understand where I was coming from on that.
Right, I
I'm
understand where you're coming from. It's just like it's just again, everyone again. The one thing that I would caution people on is this idea that you got to do this special thing before they special. It's simply put, most people's motivations aren't complicated. Most people, because again, my degree field is actually psychology, so this is something that I do get. Most people's motivations are not complicated. It's very simple and base. And the reason why people are against reparations is for the exact same reason that we ended up in slavery, and the reason why it hasn't been paid for hundreds of years. They don't like us. I mean, it's just that simple. I mean, you can't have things that happen like George Floyd. You can't have Antioch police officers caught on tape being racist. You can't have freaking McCurtain County sheriff organizing a hit on a black journalist. You can't have people choking out black people on freaking subways. Cops shooting 12-year-old black kids. You can't have cops throwing flashbang grenades into babies' cribs on a no-knock raid on the wrong house. You can't have that kind of stuff happening. You can't have civil rights era. You can't have Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. I mean, Medgar Evers. I mean, you got Rosa Parks. You got freaking Emmett Till. You name it. All of that is they are not just points in history. That's called evidence, and the evidence
well,
shows the reason why they
I'm
aren't
not
paying
saying
that is
that, but
because go ahead, go ahead. Sorry.
but
How do you repair that though?
I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying anything to mitigate or be insensitive about history. But the point that I'm making is that de- detailing causation doesn't reveal remedy. And I'm just saying that the reparations make sense, but it has to be in a workable type, some kind of program. I mean, I think just to
How?
dole out X, Y, Z, that's that's the $1 million question, right?
So let me ask you a question. So, do you break up these concerns when we pay out Native Americans? Because if you do, I'm going to call you on it. I have a few phone numbers I want you to reach out to. There's a few tribes here that I've been trying to ask them, hey guys, can you push for us to get reparations based on what you get? And they don't want to actually agree. So I think your arguments are great. I want you to give them the same arguments to Native Americans. I got a feeling that you won't though.
General, how do we change the system then?
How
Meaning,
do we change the
what's the
system?
solution? Yeah.
Oh, very simple. We simply do what's right and don't care about the consequences.
All right, but
You want to
okay,
know
so
why?
what is tell me in practice, what does that mean? What does doing right
In
mean?
practice, what you would do is you would pay cash reparations, and then from there you allow us to build from there. Because what ends up happening is whenever you get a group of black people with a large economic with a large economic windfall, what ends up happening is the black community is the one community that doesn't circulate money into our own community.
Right,
we
right,
we end up spending it into every other community but our own. So if you get
right.
a bunch of black people with a huge economic downfall, not downfall, but a huge economic windfall, basically an upgrade. What will happen is other people in other communities will get money. They will build up with us side by side. We are the people who are known to invite other people to the cookout, right? So it's not just us who will come up, it's the Jewish community, Asian community, Hispanic community, because these people already live in our communities, because we live a lot of times, a lot of our folks live in low income areas. And then when people are brought in as illegal immigrants and as freaking immigrants in general, they are stuffed in black communities. So people understand that you're already in our communities. If you give us the cash to actually build up things and actually not be so poor, what will end up happening is that everybody else will end up profiting as a result. This is why reparations will be an economic boom for the country, because we are so intertwined with everybody else. The Asian community, you see how many Asian hair salons you got in the freaking black community? How many Asian Chinese restaurants you got? A bunch of them. So if you give reparations to, let's say, Los Angeles, Compton, Philadelphia, freaking, I don't know, New York City, Detroit, Miami. If you gave that out, what would instantly happen is that everybody who has a business in a black community, they will instantly come up, because now we have the money to give you the money. You feel me?
Oh, I know, of course, I hear you loud and clear. My question though is how will that though change the system as a whole with regards to how black people are treated? How will that change the for-profit criminal justice system, mass
Oh, it definitely
incarceration?
will. Because
How though?
I want you to notice, right? Um, as much as people say Jewish people are targeted and Asian people are targeted, how much police brutality happens to Asian and Jewish people, or even Native Americans? Do you know?
No.
Not very much. Do you want to know why?
Because they're not black. No, I'm kidding.
No, no,
Because
no,
they're
no,
not
no, no.
poor. Because they're not poor.
That's that. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
essentially they don't target the Asian community because they understand you're gonna get sued.
Right,
In
and
fact,
you only have pushback. There's lawyers. They're not gonna take a ticket standing down. They're gonna challenge it in court, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah,
right. And
right.
and they understand that if you touch a Jewish person, you can have qualified immunity all you want to. Won't help you because one, they're Jewish, and two, they got money. So if you give black people a bunch of money, do you know what ends up happening? You're not so willing to pull us over for nonsense now. And on top of that, with money and our own resources, we could tell the police you can leave our neighborhood and we'll hire our own security. And if you don't leave, when our security sees you, they're going to open fire.
What is the
Simply
number
put,
that you see in mind for reparations per person?
I say a good number, a good working number. I would like to see an idea where it would modify based on area, go up, but it would have a baseline. A baseline of 200,000 would be good for me. And I base that off of the poorest state. I'm looking at places like Mississippi, right? And I'm looking, what would $200,000 do for the black residents there? It would do a lot. So the reason why I didn't
Right.
go up to basically a million, because you talk to most people like, oh, I want a million, I want 5.4 million. I'm modifying it based on area. If you live in Mississippi, the cost of living is not that high. So 200,000,
Right.
that that will help you out. Whereas two
That
hundred
goes a
thousand
long
ain't
way.
gonna do
Yeah.
nothing in like California, right?
Right. And
So
then it would be to people who have direct. Is it to any Black American or
direct
just people
descendants,
who have
direct descendants of American slaves,
of
we want to
slavery?
cut out as much of the fat as possible, right?
Right. 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 That's fair. And do you know is there a current statistics and number of how many people are direct descendants of slaves?
It is a good bit of the black community, but it's not everybody, and it would cut out. Um, I think if you do the numbers, it probably would. I don't know. I know I can probably tell you that in California, 6% of the residents in California are black descendants of American slaves. But the problem with us, right, is that the other problem that we have is that there's a lot more black people in this country than what they say. So I can't really answer that question for you because most black people do not trust the authorities. If you go talk to somebody who works in like social security or social or like social services, and you ask them, do you believe that there's more than 12 or 13% of the population is actually black? They'll say yeah, in vast majority of cases. Because I tell you,
Really?
I used to work corrections, man, and I can tell you we are much higher than 13% of the population. There's a lot of black people who simply don't trust the police. They don't trust the police. They don't trust they don't trust courts. They have no papers. There's some black people who are born who don't even have a social. Seriously, seriously. There's some black people who are, and the thing is that when you hear that, it sounds crazy, right? It sounds wild that somebody out there doesn't even have
Yeah.
like a social.
Yeah.
But if you but if you were to ask the average black person, they'd be like, yeah, of course,
My
because we
my
don't
two
trust the government.
my two youngest kids do not have socials.
Yeah, yeah, and you don't have like a 500-year history of running from the government.
Yeah, they don't have
So
socials. They don't have socials, and they
So
weren't.
then how it so then
They,
yeah, it's gonna be
and
difficult to implement that to the people though that aren't part of the system, right? That have kind of
well,
not off the
those
grid
people
but
would
separated.
absolutely come forward, and they would present
If
their
there's a-
DNA, and they would get it. And I
yeah.
think I think what would end up happening is that I think the other fear is one is the money, and two, the fear of low numbers. The white society, right? And just no offense to you guys, they're really concerned about their numbers. And if they found out that the actual population of black people in this country is more like 25, 30% of this country, because when you think about it, when you go out, right, you go out, you see a lot of black people. For us to only be 12 or 13%, right?
Well, I mean,
It's
12 to
kind of
thirteen
crazy.
percent still amounts to about 50 million people. It's not a small amount.
But
It's like
but
it's a
but
relative amount, right? Because
the
you can go to
land
towns
area
or
of
areas where it's
Texas, the land area of Texas is larger than most of Europe. So the fact that you only have 60 million people and you see this many black people, come on, man.
well, oh, no, no. I mean, I agree with you, but so black communities are also very much localized in urban centers, right? But if you go to states, there are states that have almost zero black populations. Entire towns and areas that have zero black population. Of course, if you go
Yeah.
to I'm assuming you live in a big city, like you said,
I live in
Philadelphia,
Tacoma, and even here, right,
Tacoma,
in like Washington State, we have a very low black population. But
right?
even here, I remember when I was talking to, because I'll admit it, man, I go and I see, an actual therapist, because I recommend every person
Yeah,
go
100%,
go and do that.
hundred
But I was
percent.
talking to my therapist, and she said that she was used to work at a for social security, helping doing like claims and everything else. And she was like, listen, when I say that it's like they say that only 2 to 3% of people in Washington State are black. She's like, it's more like 10%. And she's like, I've been from state to state. There's a lot more of you than what people think. It's that a lot of times you guys hide out. You don't talk a lot. Most of you don't talk a lot. People like me are absolutely rare, right?
Right. Yeah.
But most of us, if you're looking at people who have every reason to hide from the authorities and not want to be identified, it's the one people who were, taken out for wanting to read, chased down by dogs, civil rights. We have every reason to hide from the government. More reasons than just about anybody. And it's very interesting because there's some states whereas almost half the state is black, like South Carolina. Or if you go down to Georgia, it's a high black population. So no, I mean you can bring up that there's some states that have very low black population or almost zero, but there's places out there because you can't really show me a state where it's almost half Asian, almost half native. You can show me a state where it's like a high population of like Hispanic people, but the only three groups in this country that has a high population is white people, Hispanic people, and black people. We're like the only three. So there's a lot more of us than what people care to admit to, and I think one of the biggest reasons why is because then you'd realize how we're able to get a million man march so easily.
Well, by the way, you just clearly outlined an initiative and an agenda is to do a correct census of
Yeah.
Black Americans in order to organize. There's your starting point, by the way. You know what I mean? Like,
Well,
getting
I mean,
community
we don't
leaders to be-
necessarily.
I don't see
I
how
know. Go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
don't see how that can be done through DNA though. That's kind of difficult for me to wrap my
No,
mind around.
DNA, like a real census, meaning gather the leaders of the black communities across the country, across the states, across the cities, and get a real census done. You know what I mean? If only
Well,
so
the
that
problem is,
to gather those numbers so that you can have, because you said power numbers is power, right? Power in numbers. And if
well,
you can prove that there's actually 20 or 25% population, you can illustrate something where you can change demographics with regards to voting and elected representatives and, et cetera, down the line. There's your starting point, by the way, and that would be a worthy initiative to do an accurate census in order to get an accurate number. If you feel it's a real, it's
no. I mean, the thing is that even if okay, so let's look at it like this: the people who came to this country, they're originally from the British, right? So the British, they went over to India and they went over to the African continent. It didn't matter how outnumbered they were; they still oppressed those people. So you could find out because when white folks first came over to these lands, they were vastly outnumbered by the black natives and the red natives. Vastly outnumbered.
but they vastly outgunned them. They had technologies that they couldn't
Right.
even imagine, right?
But again, it was never about numbers. It's about the fact that people people want to oppress something. And it's hard to get around that simple fact because it would be one thing if reparations were actually paid when it was supposed to be paid. But not only was it not paid, the slave masters, the slave owners, they got compensated. There's no initiative we got to start if you can compensate slave masters. There's no initiative. No, you didn't get an accurate count of slave masters when you freaking paid them. You didn't even care. In fact, when white folks were moved over here to the West and the Midwest, specifically places like Michigan, Wisconsin, Washington State, Oregon, Montana, with the Homestead Act, you had whole communities who were telling white people, "Hey, come over here. We will give you land. We will give you farming equipment. We will give you livestock. We'll give you seed. We'll give you feed. You'll be fine." Wasn't nobody trying to get no count of how many white people were going to come over there. Washington State at one point was majority native. Now it's 97% white. No one cares about the numbers.
Right, but
It just matters when it comes to us.
I get that. But we're in a modern day, like today is 2023, and today numbers do matter, especially with regards to voting, right? And if we do live in a constitutional republic, and we do live in a democracy in essence, then that would matter ultimately, right? It would matter.
So what was the population of the Asian community? About 7%, right?
I think it's less than that.
Well, no,
okay, so how we've been asking one of the biggest top 3 asks of the black community, and this has been confirmed. This is not even a question. I've heard this from Tariq Nasheed. I've heard this from myself. I've heard it from Umar. I've heard it from Phil Scott. I've heard it from Al Sharpton. I've heard it from everybody. One of the biggest asks in the black community was an anti-black hate crime bill, a bill that protects us specifically. People say, well, you already have this bill. No. We want a brand new one that says us and us only, that protects us and us only. That's it. We've been asking for that. The Asian community, the AAPI community, they got that. They got that, and yet they are less than 7%. So it's not about how many people are here from the black community, and especially when you look at how much money is being given to people who are not even citizens or Ukrainians. They are certainly not American citizens, but they're being brought over here in droves. And when they're brought over here, right? This is why a lot of the Hispanic community are very upset with the Ukrainians, and rightfully so, because in places like Seattle and Washington State, some of the abandoned hotels that we could have been moving homeless veterans to, we didn't do that, and they are now moving Ukrainians into those spots now. I know because I actually drove by one of those hotels and I almost wanted to burn down. Seriously, I was that angry. Because see, I work with the homeless.
Well, you see, also, Guy, I mentioned the Emergency Banking Act earlier, and there are several reasons why I refer to that time period. And you'll see in that documentation that there was a shift in the type of quote unquote constitutional governance. The constitutional republic ended in 1933, and we fell under a socialist/communist regime. That's what the term democracy actually means.
No, we're not.
Absolutely.
Listen.
Absolutely.
Chops. Communism is central planning of the economy by the government. Okay, that doesn't exist here. What we do have here is an all. That's for sure. We do have a regulatory
what I'm referring to
which is basically
what I'm referring to is it actually does when you look at who the Fed actually is. But besides the point, I've walked into many circles out and sometimes I look, especially when I'm the only white guy in the room, it's kind of discomforting sometimes to go hear what's being said and what's being discussed. But going on what General was talking about versus what you're saying here, value or power in numbers. There's a lot of people out there, especially some of the behind the scenes black leadership in the United States that don't want those real numbers out there.
Yeah, well, I mean, they don't
want the government to know how many black Americans there really are. If something was kicked off,
I'll put
for
it this
example.
way: many of the so-called leaders have basically sold out because they figured if you can't beat them, join them. Right? You don't have a modern day Martin Luther King Jr. You don't have a modern day Malcolm X. You don't have modern day civil rights leaders. Unfortunately, you should have. I like Killer Mike.
I think you're absolutely right. I think there.
Yeah.
I think there are many that start there and then end up kind of going with the flow.
Right. But guys, I wanted to just kind of bring it on back. I want to basically focus on one thing only. And I want to understand something, right? When I had a discussion, I remember when I was at a Republican strategy meeting because I showed to Democrats and Republicans. I want to hear what they think. I heard this guy speaking named Kirk Shelley. Kirk Shelley. And Kirk Shelley, you should know that name because he's gotten several Republican presidents elected. Kirk Shelley, and he gives these seminars that he charges for. He goes around, he gives Republicans meetings and strategy sessions. And one of the reasons why we got that heartbeat bill in South Carolina, I can tell you, because some of the very politicians who helped to make that happen, I can tell you, Kirk Shelley was one of the people that was actually advising them. I still receive emails to this very day from that guy because of that one seminar that I went to. So he said something interesting. He said, I'm going to talk about the LGBT community. He says, the trans community makes up less than 1% of the American population, and yet they get bills. They get bills over black people. And he said that and looked directly at me because I was the only black guy in the room. He says, how does that work? How does that happen? He says, well, the one thing that I try to teach black Americans is, the power of having access to white people. See, the reason why white Americans have no problem with the LGBT community is because a white man can go have relations with a black man and it just be okay. It's something that white people can be a part of. This is why they have no problem with Native Americans getting so much money, because you got a lot of $5 Indians. This is why they have no problem with a lot of people who are Hispanic getting the Dreamers Act and all that other stuff, because guess what? A lot of people who are white Hispanics feel like they are actually white, even though they are Hispanic. Everything that people accept and what they oppose has everything to do with access to us. Everything to do with it. And it's hard to not see it like that if you don't live it. But when you take an honest step back, write things down on a piece of paper and be honest about what you see on that piece of paper. The only reason why people have been against reparations, the only reason why they've been against an anti-black hate crime bill, the only reason why we find ourselves with economic deprivation, and the only reason why we've been targeted for it by police mass incarceration is because we are black. You can't have the system for hundreds of years and then think the people who are the offspring of the system don't retain some of that.
Sure. Yeah, I'd buy
that. They do, and what ends up happening is that we end up having these discussions about how we can solve the problem, and what ends up happening is work on the behalf of the black community. I want you to know is that every solution that I'm giving, it doesn't create work for the black community. It creates work for everybody else. And everybody say, well, we got to get these black leaders together to go and get this right. No. We don't have to do anything. No.
Are you active politically, General? Why don't you get active and get engaged?
I don't
and
want
run for
to.
public office.
I don't want to.
You got a good voice.
I don't want to.
Passionate. You're articulate.
I don't want to.
But
I don't have
you
to.
got to be the change that you want to see. No, you
Oh
got.
no. I can be the change that I want to see by simply being a good black man and a good black father. Now, if you want me to be the change that I want to see, then I'll do that when I get the reparations to do that with the economic, mobility. I want to start all kinds of initiatives, but I don't have the economic ability to actually do so.
No, I understand, but this is where I'll give a little pushback, and I mean very little, is that ultimately, if you're correctly identifying the boogeyman, right, that is the system that is perpetuated by white supremacy, how do you expect that same boogeyman then to work for you or give something to you? Meaning that you ultimately are going to need the support of the establishment, which is predominantly white. And if they are your boogeyman, if they are your enemy, how are you going to convince them to do something for you? You're not. This is why we see mass incarceration. This is why we see a disproportionate amount of blacks in prison. And in order for you to be successful, you and then the collective black community of America need to organize. This is why Killer Mike, by the way.
Can I stop you there?
Yeah, of course.
Let me ask you a question. Did you see the poll numbers for MLK when he first came out?
No.
When he first came out, most of white America hated him. I mean, when they hated him, only less than 40% of white America approved of MLK. There was one poll that came out by, I believe it was ABC News, way back then. They put out a poll. Do you feel that MLK, Martin Luther King Jr.'s movement, is helping or hurting The vast majority of people said he's hurting America. So there's not been one thing that's been beneficial for black people that white people in the majority were not against. Not one. You can't show me one.
There was a hell of a proverbial shift
all the more
during that
reason why
time
to
because
organize yourselves, though, right?
But that
All the more
again,
reason
but
to be-
I'm going point by point. Martin Luther King organized. How did America respond?
They killed him.
Oh, okay, so the problem is not us. You keep putting more work on us. It ain't us.
No, it's not. I'm not saying that you're the problem. I'm not. This is why I wanted to be very specific with my words. Is saying that the black community needs to take its own sovereignty and self-determination and will into its own hands.
We are.
Well,
and we are
there's some
punishing
power.
Democrats by refusing to vote for him.
Good.
I
Yeah,
saw
I don't think
on ABC News earlier, 52% of black people are in support of Joe Biden, but the rest are against him. For the first time in American history, we're seeing poll numbers like that. For the first time. For the first time in American history, you're seeing black people say, if you don't support reparations, we will not vote for you. You have black people who are now single issue voters.
Good. Wield that power.
And I've seen again the whole reason why people you know it was never about getting support from other people. It was never about that. It was about forcing America to get what we want. Like, for example, the Fair Housing Act and Voting Rights Act, all that stuff. Do you know why that came?
Tell me.
Do you think it came before or after MLK was taken out?
I'm assuming after.
It happened during Hell Week. Do you know what Hell Week is?
I do not.
After MLK was taken out, Hell Week was when black people turned up and to this very day, even 2020 does not compare to Hell Week. We went ham. My grandmother was in on it. Okay, that's how crazy it got. My grandmother was in on it. I wasn't around then, obviously, but she was in on it. We forced the change when you had white slave owners who even after the Civil War would not free us. You had people called the Black Maroons who would go around from slave plantation to slave plantation, freeing black folks, forcing their hand when they wouldn't give us equal voting or even like civil rights. We did the freaking Million Man March. You had MLK, you had Malcolm X, you had Rosa Parks, you had so many other. It's never been the case that we've ever gotten change because the dominant white society agreed with the in the majority. In fact, we had to force change, force people, right? Force people. So
Right.
we'll do it by force.
I want to say one last thing before because I got to dip. I got to bounce.
Go ahead.
One last thing I wanted to say that ultimately I think I agree with basically 99% of what you're saying, and I agree that there needs to be fundamental systemic change. I think that what's missing within the black community today is that kind of leadership that can galvanize the people. You have every election cycle, community leaders convincing the black community to vote en masse Democrat, which they do.
Right.
They turn up the vote. They give the Democrats elections most of the time. And I think that that's where the power can be wielded and change can be made is when you start wielding that power collectively. And this is why I said you should get active and be a voice for your community, because you're obviously not willing to sell out in essence. But thanks for having me.
Well, I would love to have leaders in the black community who can actually speak, but unfortunately, we're not Wolverine. We're not bulletproof.
Right.
So tell them folks to stop killing us. Listen, I'm not bulletproof now. I ain't got a healing factor. I ain't no X-Man.
And I would agree. I would agree with a large percentage of what Guy is saying, and in a localized or regional setting, but not necessarily in a federal one. Um,
Right.
I don't see where a lot of that makes a difference once you get into the hierarchy, if you will, of government.
I don't
And
see how any of this makes a difference in terms of reparations payments.
right,
Because all of that, what y'all saying right now, no other group had to do any of that. You can't show me one. You
right.
can't show me where Native Americans had to do any of that to get what they're paid. I have the court documents. I can show you that. They
Well,
didn't
I
need any of
don't.
that. They had tribes, sure, but there are black Seminoles, right, who are black Native Americans right now. Have they been paid? They are certainly organized. So even if I did exactly what you said, MLK did exactly what you said in every possible way.
Yep.
He said it in 1969. He gave a speech, and many people have not seen. I would suggest that you go to my channel. It's pinned. Speech he gave. He says he said, when we're coming to Washington, we're coming to get our check, and he was saying that he wanted reparations. He said that. So he didn't say, give it to some program or some central hub. He said cash payments directly. He said it, and the thing is that he did everything that you're suggesting that I do and the black community does. He did all that. So stop putting work on us. You
No, no,
understand who we
yeah.
are. You know. Again, the cops and the courts, they have no problem distinguishing who we are. No problem. They have no issue with that. So we don't have to do any of that political stuff. No, you know what's owed. Just pay it, or there's consequences. We won't vote for
That's what I'm
Democrats
saying is
or
that it's long
or
overdue that those
freaking Republicans.
consequences come up. Right, but that's exactly what I'm saying is that maybe it's time for those consequences to occur. Like, and I'm
We
not
are.
trying to egg anyone on, but like,
Oh
dude,
no, we are. We are.
yeah,
It is bad right now. It is so bad to the point where Kamala Harris is trying to talk to black men. You've got Corey Bush and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris talking about reparations. You've got the California Reparations Task Force. You got the one in Boston. I just saw one in Chicago. You got one over there in Philadelphia. You got one popping up in numerous spots like North Carolina, Massachusetts. You got it all over the country now. They are actually capitulating because we are saying not only will we crash the political system, we will crash the economy.
dude,
We are the one
I'm
group
all
who
for it.
spends money.
Crash the political system. It needs to be destroyed. It's rotten to its core. But thanks for letting me on your live, bro.
Go
I
ahead.
gotta bounce. Take it easy.
All right, be safe, brother.
Cheers. Bye.
Peace. Yeah. Hey, is there anything else that you want to add, brother? Chops.
Well, I was gonna. I don't remember who said it. Du Bois, possibly. I'm not sure.
Go ahead.
And it was pretty profound. And you can find it that it asserts its value in many different forms. But I believe he said something along the lines of, while racism might have turned the TV on, being anti-racist won't turn it off. And there's some power in that just is just so profound. And every time I think about that speech that he made at Cornell, and I'm pretty sure that's where it came from. It just turns on different perspectives, different views of And he said it in a way that it would allude to everything that you could possibly contrive.
Right. Well, if there's nothing else, man, thank you for coming on. I just wanted to have like a conversation, right? I didn't want to be like hostile or mean or nasty or anything. I just want to have a conversation because again,
Right.
I want to get people's perspective, right? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, and that's what it's all about. I'm tired of. I think government needs to get the hell out of the way, and in times where everybody's become so offensive, or not offensive, but afraid of being offended or afraid of being offensive. And if you're going to have a sincere dialogue, you got to throw yourself on the proverbial cross, if you will, and risk being offended or risk being offending the next guy. It don't mean you have to be an ass. and just be and have it be a hateful conversation. But in order
Right,
for it to
right.
have, sincere dialogue that needs to take place, and essentially they've crossed us up to the point where people are more concerned with who is saying what rather than what's being said, and there's no conversation taking place. So I appreciate you welcoming me in.
Right, right, right. And I want you to be safe out there, okay?
You too. I'll give you a follow.
Cool, cool. Be safe out there.
Thank you.
All right, cool, cool, cool. All right, guys. Anybody else want to come on? Because I want to have this conversation, man. I want to talk, man. I want to keep getting people on and keep having the conversation. Uh, I want to know, um, how people feel about reparations. I want people to know, understand. You don't have enough followers, I'm Plaid. Sorry. You need like 1,000 followers on TikTok to get on live, to be like a live guest or even be on live. Sorry. Oliver. Who's Oliver? I don't know who Oliver is. No idea who Oliver is. Oliver, I want you to go ahead and come on hand up. Let's have a conversation, Oliver. I want to talk to you. I understand a lot of people are saying that that I would love to have you on. I want to know why I would love to have you on, Oliver. All right. All right. And reparations will happen in our lifetimes. Let's not I don't want to hear that whole defeatist talk, the whole defeatist talk where it's, oh, it won't happen in our lifetime, it's not gonna happen, you gotta worry about it. I don't want to hear that whole defeatist talk, okay? All right. I hate to borrow a page out of Candace Owens' book, but don't be a victim, be a victor. Oh man, I love beating them with their own logic. So I want to understand something, right? Why is it that there's so many, angry men? I would say, angry men that happens to be napkin complexion. Why are they so invested? Why are we so rent free in these people's heads? You know, it's not everybody, of course, but it's enough where it's just concerning. I mean, if you're so concerned about us getting money, right? If you're so concerned about that, then I suspect that you should be front and center when we send the next batch of billions off to Ukraine. You should be front and center when we send off the next billions to Ukraine. Because spending on Ukraine does absolutely nothing for this country. Let me repeat myself. Spending money on Ukraine does absolutely nothing for this country. Doesn't benefit me one iota. Doesn't even residually benefit me. I am not Ukrainian or Russian, so why are we spending so much money on them? We're spending money because they white. We're spending money because they white. Let's just give it a buck, right? It's not only obvious at this point. It ain't even just black people who are noticing, right? It is Hispanic people who have been noticing. Even they saying it. They saying, wait a minute, all these Ukrainians. Now all of a sudden, all the people who argued against us, who gave us all the trouble, now all of a sudden you want to admit that we were right, that the whole Ukrainian war was stupid, that our support of it was stupid, that us giving them any money was stupid, that them getting any of our support was stupid. Now all of a sudden you see the light. You see the light now that you're suffering financially, and these Ukrainians, they ain't. They coming over here living good. Because the question I gotta ask you is, how many homeless Ukrainians have you met? Don't worry, I'll wait. Ukrainians have you met? How many homeless Ukrainians have you come across? Riddle me that, Batman. Riddle me that. How many homeless Ukrainians have you come across in your lifetime? You hear about how they've been financially suffering. You hear that. You hear that narrative, right? Yeah? Yeah? But how many have you seen actually be homeless? How many have you seen actually financially struggle in this country. I gotta tell you, I work with the homeless where I am, and I've seen zero. Which lets me know, right? Which lets me know that their lack of suffering and my people suffering, there's a reason for that type of outcome. Because if these people can just come over here from a war zone, when they say, oh, they ain't got no jobs, they ain't got no benefits, they ain't got nothing else. They come over from a war zone, and yet they don't end up homeless like my folks do. Well, then that lets me know something, right? It lets me know that their napkin skin complexion has a lot to do with their lack of suffering. And we're not even the closest country. And I've met plenty of Ukrainians. Stephen King. You can leave my chat, Stephen King. The one thing I don't like is when people start lying. I hate that. Just, you can be a lot of things in the world. Why do you choose to be dishonest? No, I don't support other countries. I don't support other countries' citizens. I support my country. I'm not Ukrainian. I ain't Russian. I ain't Mexican. I ain't Canadian. I'm American. A black descendant of American slaves. And I care about my folks and people who look like me in my country above all else. And I won't apologize for that. Don't like it? Tough. So, and who is that snoring? That's my dog. Hold on, let me show you. My dog. It's Aphrodite. She's waiting to go out. So I gotta end this live because my dog's gotta go out. Anyways, guys, until next time, guys, be safe out there. Horns up, peace out. Good night and good luck.